She was dragged out of her seat like she didn't belong, because in their eyes, she didn't. The moment her body shifted from 2A to 14D, something cracked. Not in her voice, not in her posture, but in the system that thought it could humiliate her quietly. This wasn't turbulence. This was a takedown in motion, wrapped in politeness, backed by power, executed by design. One woman, one seat, and an entire flight crew willing to erase her to protect the comfort of a white man in a suit. They didn't ask questions. They didn't hesitate. They simply decided she wasn't meant to be there, and acted like it was procedure. But what they didn't know was that she wasn't just a passenger. She was the firewall between them and exposure. And every second they underestimated her, she rewrote the rules midair. This isn't a story about air travel. This is a story about power, race, and what happens when the most underestimated person in the room turns out to be the one who built it. If that opening hit you, don't scroll. Hit like, subscribe for the full series, and comment below. What moment would have made you stand up in that cabin? What city are you watching from? Let's talk justice, let's talk race, and let's talk about what happens when silence is no longer an option. Azariah Langston boarded the aircraft with the composed elegance of someone used to being underestimated, and then proving people wrong. She moved like a woman who didn't just belong in first class, but could buy the entire cabin if she felt like it. Her black slacks were pressed, blazer smooth, white blouse crisp beneath, and a silver Signex lapel pin gleamed quietly on her collar. Row numbers whispered past, 1A, 1B, then 2A, her seat. Or so she thought. Thatcher Rowe was already there. He reclined slightly, legs crossed, flipping through the Financial Times with the casual entitlement of someone who never heard no a day in his life. Mid-50s, clean-cut, with silver-streaked hair and a Rolex peeking beneath his cuff. He didn't even look up. Azariah hesitated only a moment before speaking. "Excuse me, I believe that's my seat." She kept her tone even, unbothered, as if this was just a formality. Thatcher didn't glance up. He simply flipped the page. "I don't think so." A hint of amusement curled in his voice like smoke. Azariah paused. 2A. That's what's on my ticket. Now he did look up, finally studying her the way one might assess a stubborn stain on white carpet. "Well," he said, eyes narrowing with lazy indifference. "Maybe check again." "There's no mistake." She reached into her coat and handed over the printed boarding pass with a practiced flick of the wrist. Just then, a flight attendant appeared beside them, blonde, polished, with that company-issued smile that always looked too tight. Her name tag read Amanda. "Is there an issue here?" she asked, eyes flicking quickly from Azariah to Thatcher. "He's in my seat," Azariah said plainly, offering the pass. Amanda took it, tapping her tablet. Her expression faltered just for a second, a microsecond flicker in her practiced professionalism. "MS. Langston, it appears your seat has been reassigned." Azariah blinked once. "Reassigned? Since when?" Amanda's smile became apologetic in that way that usually meant, "I'm hoping you won't make this difficult. There was a late VIP accommodation. You've been moved to 14D. Premium economy. Still plenty of legroom." Azariah's jaw tensed, but her expression didn't break. "Why wasn't I informed?" "The change was made shortly before boarding. We do apologize." "So you gave my seat away," she said, voice still calm but sharp now. Amanda didn't answer. Instead, she turned slightly toward Thatcher. He glanced over, watching them like someone observing workers rearrange furniture in his office. He finally spoke again, this time with a half smile, too casual, too condescending. "You know," he said slowly, "some seats aren't for everyone." Azariah's eyes locked on his. "Excuse me." "No offense," he continued, as if the phrase absolved him of everything that came after. "It's just some positions in life. Well, they're earned a certain way. Or inherited. You understand." Amanda shifted uncomfortably. The nearby passengers had gone quiet. One or two side eyes glanced over the rims of champagne flutes. "MS. Langston," Amanda interrupted quickly. "We'd be happy to escort you to your new seat. We've arranged for complimentary drinks and expedited baggage handling." Azariah didn't move. For 3 seconds, she just stared at Thatcher, reading every smug line on his face like a map. He tilted his head slightly, then added almost playfully, "It's nothing personal. You just happen to be in the way of someone more established." Amanda cleared her throat again, louder now. "Ms. Langston." Azariah inhaled slowly. Her fingers curled ever so slightly around the handle of her briefcase, knuckles taut under the leather. But she nodded once. She said nothing more. Not yet. She turned, lifting her chin just a touch higher, and followed Amanda down the aisle, past 3A, past 5D, past the gazes that trailed behind her like shadows. As she reached the divider between cabins, she caught the sound of Thatcher chuckling behind her, a low, satisfied hum. Her shoulders stiffened, but she never broke stride. 14D was narrower than she remembered. The man beside her was already asleep, head tilted awkwardly against the window. She didn't sit yet. Instead, she stood in the aisle for a moment, gripping her phone tightly in one hand. Then, without a word, she opened a secure messaging app, typed one line, and hit send. Red Trace Protocol. Activate Silent Watch on Passenger Thatcher Row. Confirm reassignment authorization. No one saw the message. No one saw her expression shift. But something under the surface cracked. The insult had been delivered. The system had moved against her. And now the plane was moving too, rolling backward from the gate as if the moment had passed. But it hadn't. Not even close. For Azariah, everything had narrowed to a single thread. The moment her seat was taken, her name erased, and that smug grin Thatcher Row had worn like a crown. Her fingers remained curled around her phone, still resting on her lap, the screen black now, but still warm. She could feel the low rumble of the engines vibrating through the floor, syncing with the slow, seething rhythm of her pulse. She didn't speak. She didn't need to, not yet. A few rows ahead, Amanda reappeared in the aisle, her steps lighter now, her smile broader. Azariah followed her movement with quiet intent. Amanda stopped beside 2A, leaning slightly toward Thatcher with a familiarity that wasn't in the handbook. He chuckled at something she said, then reached for the crystal water glass on his tray. Their exchange was hushed, but the body language said enough. Amanda touched his shoulder lightly, just for a second, and then crouched beside the seat. Azariah's eyes narrowed. Amanda lifted something from under the seat, sleek, black, with a chrome lock and reinforced corners. A briefcase. Not Thatcher's. Azariah recognized it instantly. It had been under her seat when she boarded. Not hers either, but certainly not his. Amanda passed it off casually, setting it upright beside his feet as if it belonged there all along. Thatcher barely acknowledged it, waving a hand dismissively, before tipping his head back into the seat and closing his eyes. Azariah turned her attention back to her screen. The file she had opened earlier, a live feed of encrypted logs from Signex's internal security. Refreshed. Nothing on the manifest listed Thatcher Row. Nothing legitimate, anyway. No records of his upgrade. No trace of the VIP request Amanda or Thatcher had referenced. Just an anomaly time-stamped 12 minutes before boarding. Manual override. Unauthenticated access. Azariah frowned, tapped the entry, and encrypted a snapshot for her legal team. Then she locked her phone. The flight attendant call, light above her, flashed red. A different attendant, male, younger, nervous, approached her row. "Ms. Langston," he said softly. "Would you like anything to drink before takeoff?" Azariah looked up at him. His eyes darted from her to the front of the plane and back again. He was clearly aware of what had happened. "Just water," she said. "And the name of your cabin manager, please." The attendant froze for a beat, then nodded quickly. "Of course. I'll get that right away." Azariah turned toward the window, watching the last of the ground crew wave signals as the plane pulled from the gate. The sky beyond was a dull slate gray, not yet storming, but weighted with threat. Like this flight, like this moment. A soft ding sounded through the cabin, followed by the captain's voice over the intercom. Routine, calm, mechanical. "Ladies and gentlemen, Welcome aboard Flight 384 nonstop to Zurich. Estimated flight time is 8 hours and 22 minutes. We expect a smooth ride this evening. Azariah tuned him out. Her thoughts spiraled beneath the surface, assembling the scene with the clarity of a strategist who had seen sabotage before. Not just discrimination, not just arrogance. This was maneuvering, tactical, and far too rehearsed to be spontaneous. Somewhere in the corner of her memory, she recalled a name: Red Sky Logistics, an older rival company once linked to procurement interference. They had connections to international transit routes, rumors of intelligence laundering buried under corporate mergers. Thatcher Rowe's name had come up in a Signex compliance report 3 years ago, but the lead had gone cold. She hadn't thought of him since. Now he was in her seat, and her company's case system just flagged a closed client folder he had ties to, unarchived 2 minutes ago by someone inside Schuyler's network. Coincidence didn't look like this. She tapped her phone again, opened a secure protocol, and began logging the incident. A row ahead, Amanda passed through again, still smiling, still moving as if nothing had happened. But this time, when her eyes met Azariah's, the smile twitched. It wasn't confidence, it was discomfort. Azariah held the gaze for a second too long. Amanda looked away. As the engines began their deep roar and the plane tipped skyward, Azariah sank back into her seat. But her mind didn't quiet. She knew when she was being moved off the board, and she knew how to return when it mattered most. As the seatbelt sign blinked off, a nearby passenger unbuckled and crossed to the lavatory. In his absence, Azariah leaned slightly forward and glanced through the slit between seats. There it was again, the briefcase. Still there, still untouched. Her gaze slid to Thatcher's face. He was smiling faintly, not asleep, just still. Azariah Langston didn't react outwardly, but her mind sharpened the moment she heard the whisper. The man in 14E was older, wiry, with a briefcase resting on his knees and reading glasses perched at the edge of his nose. He leaned in just enough to be heard over the ambient engine hum and the dull chatter of other passengers. "You're not the first," he murmured, eyes fixed on the tray table in front of him. "They call it Protocol 8A. Standard tactic. Remove non-compliant passengers from first class without direct confrontation." Azariah turned her head slightly, not enough to alarm the attendants, but just enough to meet his eyes. "Define non-compliant," she said, her tone barely a breath. He gave the faintest smirk. "Let's just say you don't fit the profile they're told to protect." Her fingers tightened subtly on the phone resting on her lap. "And you've seen this happen?" He gave a shallow nod. 3 times. Always the same. Solo traveler. Minority. High visibility seat. Then suddenly system errors push them into economy, while someone else slides into their spot. You make noise, they slap you with interfering with crew instructions. Silent removals. No paper trail. Azariah said nothing, but inside, gears began to shift. She raised her phone and opened a Signex secured terminal. Her thumb hovered over the biometric lock before pressing down and holding. A red screen blinked once, then displayed a field prompt. Executive override level 4 AUTH required. She typed, "Red trace / active threat protocol / FLT 384 and hit send." The message transmitted through a secure relay, scrambled through multiple nodes, then landed quietly at a data bunker somewhere beneath a nondescript building in San Francisco, home to Signex's internal corporate intelligence division. Within seconds, a terminal lit up 3,000 miles away. Someone was watching now. Azariah leaned back and shut her eyes for effect. Beside her, the old man chuckled dryly. "They don't expect people like us to have leverage. They always forget," she whispered, "who built the systems they hide behind." Elsewhere on the aircraft, in seat 9C, a man wearing jeans, a hoodie, and noise-canceling headphones that weren't actually playing anything slowly opened his eyes. His name was Dorian Vance, and he wasn't a passenger. He was Signex's Director of Internal Counterintelligence, embedded 2 flights a month on random global routes as part of Project Aegis, a mobile response program Azariah had designed herself. The second red trace pinged his secondary device, a smartwatch that vibrated once with a non-standard pattern. He sat up straighter and tilted his phone to begin recording. Dorian scanned the cabin without moving his head. He located Thatcher in 2A, still reclined, still smug, with the briefcase Amanda had retrieved earlier now tucked between his legs. Dorian's software synced to the in-flight Wi-Fi bypass layer and requested a shadow copy of the cabin camera logs. He isolated the moments from earlier, Amanda reaching beneath the seat, passing the case without logging any cargo transfer, and Thatcher accepting it without signature. One freeze frame showed Amanda whispering something as she handed it off. Dorian ran an audio enhancer. Static. Then, no tag. No manifest. No trace. His eyes narrowed. He took a still of the handoff, encrypted it, and sent it through the emergency drop server labeled Phoenix node. His phone buzzed once more. Incoming file. Subject ID match recipient. T. Row, alias linked to case 991-43. Federal Surveillance Tier 3 Open Laundering Investigation. Dorian's pulse quickened. His cover persona remained intact, but the red line was clear. This wasn't just about Azariah's seat. Something bigger was in motion. He tapped a silent command on his screen. Initiate shadow trace // flag, all devices on board linked to Row. Meanwhile, Thatcher casually reached for his phone. He spoke low, too low for the cabin to hear, but Dorian's proximity mic rig, disguised as a zipper tab on his hoodie, picked it up. "She's not taking the bait," Thatcher said. A pause. Then, "If she escalates, what's the contingency?" A clipped male voice responded faintly. "Containment. Brielle's embedded. If it gets messy, she's your cleaner. No loose ends. Tonight, we control the board." Thatcher exhaled through his nose, annoyed. "If I go down for this, you'll burn with me." "You won't. She's not our problem. The vote tomorrow is." The call ended. Dorian's eyes narrowed. He flagged the audio log and queued it for Azariah's terminal. Back in 14D, Azariah's phone buzzed once. Coded pulse pattern only she and 2 other people could read. She opened the message. Primary confirmed. Row is cleaning house. Threat level 5. Payload on board. Her breath slowed. Not fear. Focus. The kind she hadn't felt since her earliest days navigating hostile takeovers, with more at stake than money. Across the aisle, the old man noticed her stillness. "Trouble?" he asked. She gave a single, precise nod. More than they planned for. At the front of the cabin, Amanda reappeared and exchanged a glance with someone at the galley. A different attendant, a man in his 40s with a military gait and hollow stare, nodded. Amanda stepped into the cockpit briefly. Dorian watched it all. He noted her lips, her hand signals, her access to flight logs. He flagged the sequence. The system clock in his HUD blinked. 5 minutes since the briefcase changed hands. 3 since the phone call. Now things were moving. Dorian Vance didn't need permission to escalate. Red Trace Protocol gave him full discretionary control. With Azariah now aware of the breach and Thatcher exposed as more than just an entitled passenger, the counter-surveillance phase moved into effect. He tapped twice on the inside of his smartwatch bezel, activating a low-bandwidth, passive scanning mode that piggybacked on the plane's internal systems, namely, the overhead communication relays used for crew coordination and cabin announcements. The system wasn't designed to be secure, and Dorian knew exactly where to look. Within seconds, a flood of metadata streamed into his field display, timestamps, crew log pings, cross-cabin comms, and biometric readings. It all painted a picture. Thatcher Rowe wasn't just getting favors from flight staff. He was operating with inside access, privileges that normal passengers couldn't dream of. From rows 1 through 5, for crew interactions, had been registered under the same coded override key. That key was tied not to an official passenger account, but to a maintenance-level alias, Alpha 08D. That designation wasn't public. It was an internal company flag, used for discrete asset handling. Translation: someone smuggled that briefcase on board through a back door in the manifest. Dorian zoomed in on the handoff. His smart lens, disguised as a contact, captured the moment frame by frame. Amanda knelt, placed the case, whispered something. He ran an audio filter again, this time from a better angle. It was clearer. No tag. No chain. No record. No trace. He sent the footage to a secure Signex node labeled Sentinel-12, then accessed the internal cabin mic diagnostics. He didn't need to hear everything, just the signals between Thatcher, Amanda, and the cockpit. 30 seconds later, a private crew channel blipped active. Amanda's voice came through first, tight and composed. Package is placed. Passenger has not noticed. Target in 14D is stable. Proceeding with standard watch. Then came the pilot's voice. Confirm passenger Langston was removed per protocol. Amanda, yes. She's been repositioned. No resistance. The response was casual. Then we're clear to proceed with hold pattern Bravo. Dorian frowned. Hold pattern? They weren't scheduled to divert or delay. What were they buying time for? His fingers danced across his screen as he rerouted access to the plane's navigational substructure logs. A restricted entry had been made from a cockpit. Unauthorized? No. Marked as routine. But the destination waypoint had shifted by 3 degrees. Not enough to alter the city. Enough to change the airspace they would cross. A less regulated corridor. He leaned back, process fast. This wasn't about passenger discomfort anymore. This was operational. He typed a short message into his Black Ops relay. Possible in-flight handoff. Threat on board. Identity, Thatcher Rowe. Case Alpha in his possession. Crew compromised. Full lockdown not viable. Initiating shadow control. Then he locked the screen and turned slightly in his seat, angling toward the aisle like just another tired traveler stretching his spine. 2 rows ahead, Amanda and Brielle were speaking near the galley. Dorian angled his camera just enough to pick up their lips. Brielle looked agitated. She whispered sharply, "She's watching everything." Amanda shrugged. "Let her watch. She doesn't know what we're moving." "She will," Brielle snapped. "She's not just anyone. This is the woman who made deep lock obsolete. She builds surveillance for defense contractors. She invented patternless trace mapping." Amanda's jaw flexed. "Then we make sure she never connects the dots." Brielle hesitated. "Should I flag the payload?" Amanda shook her head. "No, not yet. If she makes a move, we isolate her before touchdown. Otherwise, we play it smooth. No mistakes." Dorian blinked once and mentally tagged the entire conversation. He sent a short ping to Azariah's device using the subcarrier frequency layered beneath the cabin Wi-Fi. Audio confirms crew collusion. 2 operatives. 1 asset. Payload is shielded. Stand by for extraction logic. At that moment, Azariah, still seated in 14D, felt the vibration on her phone. She read the message, then activated her ring. It wasn't jewelry, it was a control key, embedded with NFC override tech designed for emergencies. She held it discreetly against her tablet case, which synced instantly to the primary cabin system overlay her team had coded during Schuyler's last security audit. An audit they had quietly sabotaged with backdoors for precisely this kind of threat. Now she had silent read-only access to the aircraft's real-time cabin telemetry, manifest changes, and, most importantly, localized heat signatures. She watched the screen populate with pulses. 1 ping cold. The briefcase. A thermal-dampened payload. Not clothing. Not electronics. Something specifically designed to bypass detection. Dangerous. She tapped a command. Handoff log request. Row plus crew. Nothing populated. The system threw an error. Missing record. That was confirmation. They'd manually suppressed evidence. She typed 1 word into her relay terminal. Trap. Seconds later, Dorian stood casually, pretending to stretch. He reached into the overhead bin, pulling out a jacket with a tiny fiber camera embedded in the collar seam. He turned and headed down the aisle, passing row 2. As he did, he activated the camera. The lens caught the entire layout. Amanda at the galley. Thatcher dozing lightly with the briefcase between his feet. Brielle walking toward the rear. Everything was positioned. He slipped back into his seat, tapped the collar once to confirm upload, and waited. In San Francisco, a Signex analyst leaned forward as the image feed streamed into their screen. She flagged the case, ran it through object detection. No match. Not in commercial logs. Not in TSA. Not even in military contractor databases. It was ghost gear. Dorian received the confirmation. He didn't smile. He simply messaged Azariah, "This isn't about moving seats. They're moving something bigger than luggage. You were just in the way." Now deep scan pattern recognition had returned results, and one name blinked in red across his private display: Cameron Cross. The alias had surfaced 3 years ago in a covert laundering investigation tied to offshore accounts funneled through chartered cargo flights, posing as executive jets. The last time this name appeared was on a flagged Skylar manifest in Sao Paulo, a case frozen due to lack of jurisdiction. Now, on Flight 384, Cross was back, this time hidden beneath the override that pushed Azariah out of 2A. Dorian's blood chilled, not because of the discovery, but because of how deliberate it all felt. He leaned forward slightly, careful to maintain his passenger facade, and tapped a command to cross-reference Cameron Cross with facial patterning captured from the man into a Thatcher Row. The algorithm processed, paused, and then locked in a 92% match. Rowe and Cross were the same person. Dorian's jaw tightened. He sent the match to Azariah's encrypted inbox, tagged urgent. Across the aisle in 14D, Azariah opened the file with steady hands. Her eyes didn't widen, her posture didn't change, but inside, a storm began to churn. Thatcher Rowe, if that was even his real name, wasn't just a pompous executive. He was a high-level operative for a financial laundering ring using first-class routes to move untraceable assets. And tonight, he wasn't just carrying a briefcase. He was carrying leverage. Azariah locked her screen just as a cabin-wide ding signaled the second meal service. The lights softened. Music resumed faintly. A calculated calm to hide the unfolding game of chess. Meanwhile, Thatcher leaned to one side, adjusted his collar, and slid a phone from the inner pocket of his suit. It was unmarked, no carrier logo, and powered by a satellite pulse, non-traceable. He spoke softly, his voice barely audible, but Dorian's mic caught it from 10 feet away. "She's too still. She's watching something," he muttered. The voice on the other end responded instantly, deeper, controlled. "Let her. She doesn't matter." Thatcher paused. "And if she makes noise?" The voice scoffed. "Noise doesn't stop machinery. In 4 hours, we'll be in Zurich. When we land, the vote passes. We'll have board majority new bylaws and full authorization to seize Skylar's innovation wing." "Langston's on that wing," Thatcher reminded him. "She still has stake." "Not for long," the voice replied. "We'll make her a liability. If necessary, tie her to a federal inquiry." "She's not stupid," Thatcher muttered. "No," the voice admitted. "But she's alone. That makes her predictable." Dorian encrypted the recording in real time, marked the speaker as unidentified male, and ran it through Signex's active threat database. One potential match pinged back: Harlan Creed, former Skylar board member, ousted in a private corruption vote. Last seen operating in Eastern Europe under shell corporations tied to shadow investment entities. Thought buried. Apparently not. Dorian sent the voice sample to Azariah with one line of text: "It's Creed." The reply came 2 seconds later: "Then this isn't sabotage. It's takeover." Azariah inhaled slowly, measured, then reached into her blazer and adjusted her smart ring. The diamond surface was actually sapphire glass, concealing a rolling NFC encoder linked to Signex's shadow access tool, Project Tracelock. With one flick against her tablet, she triggered a silent scan of crew logs and security cam proximity records. What she found confirmed everything. Thatcher had been logged within 3 feet of Amanda, Brielle, and, critically, the flight captain twice in the last 90 minutes. Unauthorized crew cabin access. Not listed in protocol. Hidden by system ghost entries. They weren't just moving a briefcase. They were moving leverage, blackmail, possibly corporate infiltration tech. And she had been their only obstacle. Thatcher, still reclined, turned toward Amanda as she passed with the drink cart. "She's not acting," he whispered. "You sure she didn't recognize the pattern?" Amanda shook her head. She was pushed from the system clean. No access. Brielle said her name didn't even trigger cabin camera tracking. Thatcher narrowed his eyes. "If she acts, I want eyes on her before she stands up." Amanda nodded once. "Understood." Back in 9C, Dorian watched Amanda's lips, processed her words, cross-tagged them with prior audio files, and confirmed coordination. They were circling Azariah like hyenas, waiting for her to stumble. He sent her a final update. Crew compromised. Pilot linked. Goal: control company from Zurich landing point. You are the last firewall. Azariah read it, blinked once, then began composing a document on her tablet. Not a report, not a message, but a declaration. Notice of imminent breach corporate intervention under Article 7.6.1. Her next move wouldn't be silent. But for now, she watched the cabin. Watched Thatcher sip whiskey like a man already celebrating. A soft click sounded in Brielle's earpiece, followed by a hushed male voice from flight operations. "Brielle, be advised. If anyone attempts to access the item in 2A, initiate containment. Send live data directly to internal compliance. No escalation without chain review." The message was official, clinical, protocol. But Brielle didn't even blink. She tapped the side of her earpiece in acknowledgement, then pivoted sharply on her heel and returned to the forward galley. Her face remained calm, but her fingers moved quickly as she reached into the crew terminal, entering a 6-digit override code into the operations relay. The screen flashed green. Command accepted. Her fingers then hovered over the internal communication tab, and she tapped a hidden subchannel labeled Roecho. The channel was encrypted, unofficial, unlogged. A direct line to Thatcher. In a silent burst of vibration, his phone lit up in his palm. He opened the message with practice speed. One line blinked on his screen. "She's moving. She's watching the system. I'll handle it." Thatcher exhaled slowly through his nose, the faintest grin curving at the edge of his mouth. He typed back without hesitation, quietly. "No confrontation. If she forces it, we isolate." Back in 14D, Azariah reviewed the diagnostic sweeper ring had triggered. The results were chilling. The briefcase had been tagged with a signal scrambler designed to mask thermal output and disrupt RFID scans, military grade, but disguised as luggage liner tech. The system had tried to flag it once during pre-boarding. The ping had been overridden by Brielle. There it was, her ID code embedded in the access log, rerouted through a ghost node scrubbed to look like ground ops. It wasn't a system error. It was sabotage. Azariah's jaw tensed, but she didn't move. Not yet. She composed a silent memo on her tablet. Cabin crew compromised. Led Brielle. Collaborating with Roe. Payload untagged. Initiating defensive protocol under Clause 7.2. The document auto-saved into Signex legal vaults, timestamped, locked, and set for timed release if her vitals flatlined or if she failed to make contact upon landing. As insurance, she attached a copy of Dorian's footage, complete with filtered audio of Thatcher's earlier call. "If she leaks, we burn her. Tonight, we take Skylar." 2 rows up, Dorian caught Brielle's sudden change in movement. She had retrieved a linen satchel from the service hatch, not unusual. But what caught his attention was the way she held it, close to her chest, left hand slightly angled inward. It was a grip designed to conceal a secondary device. He activated his collar cam again and sent a short encrypted ping to Azariah. "Brielle has a concealment carry. Unknown item. Could be suppressor or injector. Watch your flank." Azariah read the message just as Brielle began her slow, casual return down the aisle. This time not with drinks, but with a single, neatly folded blanket. She paused at 14D, the perfect picture of professional warmth. "It's getting a little cold in the cabin," she said sweetly. "Would you like a blanket, MS? Langston?" Azariah looked up, offering the smallest smile. "That's thoughtful," she said. "But no, I'm quite comfortable." Brielle's smile didn't fade, but her eyes did. "Of course," she replied softly. "If you change your mind, I'll be nearby." She turned, continued her walk, and paused again 2 rows behind. There, out of Azariah's direct line of sight, she crouched to assist a passenger with a dropped item. But her left hand reached beneath the satchel, adjusted something. Dorian zoomed in, enhanced the image. A small trigger device, non-lethal, likely designed for immobilization. She was preparing to act. He tapped a command into his phone, diverting cabin power readings to track magnetic anomalies. The results were instant. Brielle's satchel was lined with a polarity disruptor, used in executive protection units to jam small-scale surveillance. If she got close enough to Azariah, her ring would be useless. Dorian sent the last message he could before switching to hardline protocol. Contact in 90 seconds. Get ready. Azariah received it, then calmly opened her notebook, flipped to a blank page, and wrote 2 words in block lettering. Brielle knows. She angled the page slightly, ensuring Dorian could see it when she shifted. Then she shut the notebook, turned her body slightly toward the aisle, and waited. The lights dimmed further for evening mode. The hum of the engines deepened. Brielle returned slowly, confidently, and paused at the end of Azariah's row. She smiled again. This time, the sweetness had faded. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me for just a moment." Quick security check from the flight crew. Nothing serious. Azariah tilted her head. Security check. Standard procedure. Random. Won't take more than a minute. "I see," Azariah replied, her voice even. "Let me grab my tablet." She noted the subtle changes in cabin lighting, the shift in air pressure, the slight lag in passenger chatter. Signals of isolation, of control. Brielle stopped at the divider near the galley and gestured toward a slim panel beside the emergency exit. "Just over here, ma'am," she said with forced calm, her hand brushing the edge of the satchel still hanging off her shoulder. Azariah didn't react. She paused beside the panel, glanced toward the front bulkhead, and immediately identified the embedded override reader. Skylier's emergency verification terminal used only for Tier 1 crew scans. She wasn't meant to be verified. She was meant to be removed. Her voice remained even. "Is this where you usually perform random checks?" Brielle smiled tightly. "Only on sensitive flights. Zurich's always flag high risk." "For cargo?" Azariah asked casually. "Or passengers?" "Both," Brielle replied, just as casually, though her fingers were tightening on the strap. At that moment, Azariah reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her tablet. She tapped a message with her thumb, a direct line to Skylier's acting CEO, Emmerich Klein, routed through Cygnex's emergency channel. "Flight 384 has internal crew compromise. Breach suspected. Passenger override access in use. Validate or respond immediately." She hit send. Nothing happened. The message stalled, spinning. Then, after a full 10 seconds, the reply came back, request acknowledged. Current response capacity limited due to simultaneous security audit. Will respond post-confirmation. Azariah narrowed her eyes. Security audit? During an international flight with high-level stakeholders aboard? The timing wasn't coincidence. It was containment. She sent one more line. "Do you understand the severity of what's in motion here?" No reply. She turned toward Brielle. "How much longer will this take?" "Almost done," Brielle said, then leaned toward the terminal and pressed her ID badge to the panel. It blinked red. "Strange," she murmured. "Let me reset." "Don't bother," Azariah said. "I already know it's not active." Brielle straightened. "Excuse me. The override system isn't live. This isn't protocol. It's theater." Brielle blinked once, slowly. Then her smile vanished. "You're smarter than they said." Azariah tilted her head. "And you're sloppier than you think." Back in 9C, Dorian Vance pulled up his outbound server relay, attempting to send the packet of video and audio evidence to a secured external server outside Skylier's internal cloud. He tapped the command, "Deploy to Sentinel Drop." The progress bar appeared. 3%, 4%. Then it froze. Connection lost. He frowned, ran a diagnostic. All external traffic from the aircraft had been rerouted through a filter labeled FSX Core. That wasn't Cygnex's infrastructure. That was Skylier's internal administrative channel, normally used for billing, internal updates, and mid-flight itinerary adjustments. It wasn't just a firewall. It was a digital airlock. Someone in the cockpit, or higher, had sealed the plane from the outside world. He launched a trace request and watched the packet bounce back with an error code tagged. Containment mode active, outbound lock in effect. Origin, Evans R. His jaw tightened. The pilot, Captain Evans, the one supposed to be in charge of safety, had activated a protocol designed to isolate any data from escaping the aircraft. Dorian initiated the fallback loop, encoding the footage into compressed biometric pings that would ride the in-cabin diagnostics data stream in fragments, invisible to Skylier scrubbers. It would take time, but the signal would get out. Meanwhile, Brielle took a step closer to Azariah. You think you're in control, but you're not. You're trapped in the air, and no one is going to help you. Azariah's tone didn't shift. I don't need help. I need time. For what? Brielle sneered. To type up another report? To call your board? Azariah met her gaze without blinking. No. To let your arrogance collapse on top of you. Brielle stared for a beat, then shook her head, stepping back. We should get you seated again. For your safety, of course. As they walked back, Azariah glanced over her shoulder toward the front galley. Two figures stood in shadows behind the cockpit door. One of them was Captain Evans. The other she didn't recognize, but the presence alone told her enough. The operation wasn't isolated. It was layered, coordinated, protected. She sat again in 14D, adjusting her coat as Brielle stepped away, but now her ring pulsed silently twice. Dorian's emergency signal. She tapped her phone to sync. The message came through in segmented lines. External comms blocked. Evidence frozen. Pilot confirmed as active participant. We're boxed in. Game is on. The overhead chime rang out and the cabin speakers crackled to life with a sterile pre-recorded voice. Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We are conducting a precautionary systems check due to a minor technical alert. The voice lacked emotion, lacked identification, and that told Azariah everything. It wasn't the captain. It wasn't crew. It was triggered remotely from a concealed console, likely the flight operations assistant interface, accessible only to command-level staff. She looked to the front of the plane and saw Thatcher whisper something to Amanda, who immediately turned and disappeared behind the galley curtain. Brielle hovered mid-aisle, watching her too closely. Azariah didn't break her expression. Instead, she reached slowly into the inner lining of her jacket, where her fingers found the tiny clasp she'd been waiting to activate since Wheels Up. Inside was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was smaller, quieter, more powerful. Her smart ring glowed once as she twisted the top, exposing the embedded NFC chip, TraceLock 8, a proprietary control override tool she developed in secret within Signex's contingency division, never authorized for public or private use. She tapped it twice against the base of her tablet, initiating a handshake signal that instantly bypassed the aircraft's mainframe access and rewired permissions for the connected administrative nodes, specifically those linked to cabin power, internal comms, and localized flight path diagnostics. The screen flickered. Then it opened a silent terminal. Cabin 1, access level override. Langston/Alpha, exec. She didn't smile. She executed. Her fingers moved with methodical precision as she routed control through TraceLock, locking out crew overrides and replacing all subroutine triggers with a singular encryption, key only she could authorize. She had just turned the cockpit's isolation tactic against itself. Now all first-class cabin systems, door locks, pressure controls, PA routing, biometric sensors, ran through her terminal. In that moment, she didn't just regain access. She took control. Meanwhile, Dorian Vance received the handshake ping in his own device, which vibrated in a unique cadence. Langston signal. It was the equivalent of a digital green light. He knew what it meant. Initiate ground wake, he whispered, then opened a dormant app disguised as a news widget and entered a passcode. The moment he did, a data packet embedded inside the aircraft's entertainment firmware activated. It was a ghost program, designed to piggyback every screen, every embedded system, and open a one-way channel directly to Cygnex's security mainframe, bypassing Skylier's lockouts entirely. Back at Cygnex HQ, a junior engineer monitoring passive relays nearly fell out of his chair as the alert flashed across the mainframe. Flight 384 passive command hijack detected trace signature. Langston. Within seconds, the internal threat response team launched full protocol escalation, pushing Azariah's real-time feed into the war room screen, displaying every cabin movement, every heat signature, every data packet flying through the air. Back in the aircraft, Azariah muted the PA chime that was about to trigger again, rerouted internal comms, and broadcast a silent tone that disabled the crew's push-to-talk headsets for 15 seconds. Just enough. She took that window to scan passenger logs again and filtered anomalies. Passengers with no check-in time, no digital boarding signature, or no ticket purchase trail. 4 names blinked red. One was Thatcher. One was the man now seated near the rear lavatory with a military posture and a crew badge clipped to his belt. Unofficial, unverified. He wasn't real crew. She flagged him immediately and pushed his ID to Dorian with a single word: Phantom. Dorian stood casually, stretching, then made his way toward the rear under the pretense of using the restroom. As he passed the suspected Phantom, he paused, glanced down, and read the badge. It said Stevens Flight Support, but bore the wrong logo, an older design retired 2 years ago. Rookie mistake. Dorian smirked. He stepped into the lavatory, tapped the lock shut, and activated a hidden scanner built into the buckle of his belt. It picked up 2 concealed electronics beneath the man's jacket, one with a faint heat source. Likely a communication disruptor. Maybe more. He sent the reading back to Azariah. She redirected power from the cabin's entertainment circuit and surged it through the IL relay that powered the reading lights. The cabin lights flickered once. That was her signal. From that moment, the Phantom agent lost wireless relay. His comm went dark. Dorian exited the lavatory, nodded politely to him, then walked past, noting the way the man's eyes shifted. He was trying to re-establish connection. He couldn't. Azariah watched it all on her tablet. From the corner of her eye, she saw Brielle speaking urgently to Amanda, both of them looking increasingly uneasy. Their network was slipping. Their illusion of control was bleeding out. At the front, Thatcher stood suddenly, agitated. "Why are the comms down?" he barked toward Amanda. "Give me cockpit clearance. Now." But Amanda couldn't respond. Her headset was silent. Thatcher stood near seat 2A, one hand gripping the headrest, the other clenching his phone, its display now reading no signal. He turned slowly, eyes darting to Amanda, then to Brielle, who both looked frozen, their earpieces silent, their screens blank. "What the hell is going on?" he barked, voice sharp, cutting across the sudden hush. "Why aren't the systems responding?" No answer came. Amanda tried her tablet, tapped furiously, but the interface remained dimmed, locked out. Brielle looked at her, then at Thatcher. "It's her," she whispered, barely audible. "She's inside the system." "Impossible," Thatcher snapped, but the tightness in his jaw betrayed the creeping doubt. He turned, marched back down the aisle toward his seat, and found Azariah already watching him. Her posture was relaxed, composed, but her eyes held fire. "Langston," he growled, stopping just short of 14D. "I don't know what stunt you think you're pulling, but you're tampering with federal flight systems. That's a felony." Azariah didn't blink. "You're right," she said coolly. "Unless, of course, you're the one breaking the law first." "You don't get to talk about law," he snapped. "You were ejected from first class for a reason. This seat, this plane, it doesn't belong to you." "No," she said, "but the control protocols running through this aircraft do. And I just rewrote the hierarchy. I'll have you arrested the moment we land," he snarled. "You've just signed your resignation from aboard." Azariah tilted her head slightly. "Interesting, considering the board already called an emergency meeting 3 minutes ago. Would you like to hear what they had to say?" Before Thatcher could respond, a chime echoed through the cabin speakers, not the system's default tone, but one routed directly from Azariah's tablet. The main cabin screen powered on, cutting through the silence. Every passenger looked up as the Skylure logo faded into the face of a man, dignified, silver-haired, seated in a boardroom with the company seal behind him. "This is Benjamin Whitlow, chairman of Skylure Aviation Holdings," he began. "Effective immediately, I am issuing a Level 3 directive under the company's emergency oversight charter. We have received verified evidence of a coordinated breach aboard Flight 384 involving manipulation of internal systems, reassignment of security zones, and obstruction of corporate equity governance. The crew involved, including Flight Operations Lead Amanda Cleary and Flight Safety Officer Brielle Hart, are hereby relieved of duty, pending formal investigation." The cabin erupted into stunned silence. Amanda gasped, her legs going weak as she sat down hard into the nearest jump seat. Brielle turned ghost white. Whitlow continued, "Furthermore, any passengers operating under false credentials or using aliases to board this flight will be met by federal authorities upon landing. We are cooperating with global regulators to ensure criminal accountability. Let this be clear. Skylure will not protect those who manipulate our systems for personal gain." The screen faded to black. A heartbeat passed. Then another. Thatcher laughed. It was dry hollow. "You think this scares me? I own 32% of the company. You think they'll vote me out because of one hiccup?" Azariah's reply came without pause. "Your shares were placed into escrow as of 10 minutes ago, due to conflict of interest violations tied to active criminal investigation. You're not an owner anymore, Thatcher. You're a liability." His face twisted, no longer arrogant, just angry. He turned to march toward the cockpit, but the door remained sealed. No codes worked. No override responded. And the pilot, Captain Evans, was no longer in command. Dorian Vance appeared from the rear of the cabin, walking calmly down the aisle. He stopped beside Thatcher, eyes hard. "Mr. Rowe Cameron Cross, whatever name you're using now, you're being asked to step away from your seat." "By who?" Thatcher spat. "You." Dorian raised a small badge from his coat, flashing a federal seal. "By the Office of Aviation Crimes and International Financial Enforcement. You've been watched since Sao Paulo. You have no jurisdiction up here," Thatcher said, shaking his head, but the defiance had cracks now. "No," Dorian said, "but Zurich does. And they're waiting." Thatcher didn't move. Dorian leaned in slightly. "You make this physical, I make this public. Your name, your network, your financials, live in real time." Thatcher's eyes flicked toward the watching passengers, all silent now, all witnesses. Slowly he stepped back. Then he sat. Azariah tapped one last command into her tablet. The control system deactivated her lockouts, restoring standard flight authority to the pilot, but not without one final flag. All crew under investigation restrict cockpit access until landing. The wheels touched down on Zurich's tarmac with a low, reverberating thud, and as the engines decelerated, a hush fell over the cabin unlike any other landing Azariah Langston had ever experienced. It was not the silence of travel-worn passengers or the familiar stillness before disembarkation. It was the dense, waiting quiet of consequence. As the aircraft taxied toward a remote gate, she watched Thatcher sit rigid in 2A, his arms folded, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward like a man trying to will time backward. Behind him, Amanda stared blankly at the bulkhead wall, her posture collapsed, headset hanging uselessly around her neck. Brielle had disappeared into the galley minutes earlier and hadn't returned since. The PA system had remained off since Azariah had surrendered cabin control, and the official pilot voice, the real one, had not returned to the intercom. The captain, now fully aware that his name was attached to a security lockdown ordered under criminal protocol, had no words left for his passengers. No excuses could save him now. The aircraft came to a full stop. The seatbelt light pinged off, but no one moved. Then, without warning, the cabin door unlocked with a sharp mechanical hiss, and a staircase platform was rolled into position outside. The boarding bridge had been bypassed. This wasn't commercial disembarkation. This was federal intervention. Through the first-class windows, Azariah saw them approaching, 3 men and 2 women in dark tactical suits bearing the crest of the Zurich Airport Special Investigations Unit, flanked by 2 agents from Interpol's Financial Crimes Division. One of them raised a gloved fist and knocked twice on the fuselage door. The silence cracked. Azariah stood but made no move forward. She didn't need to. The crew door opened from the outside, and the lead agent stepped inside, his voice calm and unmistakably authoritative. "We're here for passengers Thatcher Rowe, Amanda Cleary, Brielle Hart, and Flight Captain Roger Evans. You are all named in an international warrant related to falsified travel documentation, asset laundering, and conspiracy to obstruct corporate governance." Gasps rippled down the cabin. Thatcher didn't stand. "This is a mistake," he said quietly, staring at the floor. "I own part of this company. You can't arrest shareholders." The lead agent didn't blink. "You can when their shares are frozen and their voting rights revoked by emergency injunction." "Stand up, sir." Thatcher slowly rose, hands visible, and allowed the cuffs to be applied. Amanda followed, barely coherent. Brielle had to be pulled from the galley. Her protest was a whisper. "I was just following instructions." Dorian moved to the rear of the cabin and opened the barrier, nodding to a plainclothes agent waiting outside. Azariah remained near her seat as the arrests unfolded. Passengers gawked, some pulled out phones, others watched in stunned reverence. A few clapped, quietly, not for the drama, but for the justice. After the final agent escorted the detainees down the mobile stairwell, Azariah stepped forward. One of the investigators paused near the exit and turned to her. "Ms. Langston," he said, "we've secured the briefcase. Zurich's forensic team is already waiting on the ground. Your team may send its legal representative for observation." Azariah nodded once. "Thank you. I'll have counsel on site within the hour." He hesitated, then added, "What you did up here, it's rare. Most people would have waited to act. You didn't." Her gaze remained steady. Silence doesn't stop corruption. Systems don't fix themselves. They require someone to disrupt them from within. He gave a short nod and stepped off the plane. Within the hour, the remaining passengers were allowed to disembark. No one complained. No one rushed. They exited as if leaving the scene of a storm. Outside, a light drizzle dampened the tarmac. But to Azariah, the air felt cleaner than it had at 35,000 feet. Later that night, in a private conference room overlooking Lake Zurich, the emergency board session concluded with a unanimous vote. Azariah Langston was officially named to the Skylure Aviation Executive Governance Committee, with full oversight privileges over internal ethics compliance, executive flight operations, and security restructuring. At the press conference the next morning, standing behind a podium bearing both Skylure's logo and Cygnex's insignia, she delivered the statement herself. The room was packed with media, executives, and legal counsel. Her voice was clear, firm, but never theatrical. Yesterday's events aboard Flight 384 exposed a failure of oversight, a betrayal of trust, and the ease with which power can be abused behind closed doors at 35,000 feet. But more than that, it revealed the strength of resistance, the proof that vigilance and courage are more than corporate buzzwords. They are necessities. She paused, scanning the crowd. Let this be a message, not just to Skylure shareholders, but to every boardroom, every cockpit, and every system designed to keep certain people out. We are not waiting for inclusion anymore. We are taking our seats, not by permission, but by right. A standing ovation followed, not choreographed, not forced, but organic, earned. As the cameras flashed, Azariah stepped down from the stage and into the corridor. Dorian was waiting with a tablet in one hand and a faint smile. "Red Trace is being updated," he said. "New protocols already in testing." "Good," she replied. "Next time they try this, I want the plane grounded before the wheels leave the runway." He offered her the tablet. "You want to review the incident log?" She shook her head. "I lived it." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. The end. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more high-stakes narratives that challenge power and spotlight justice. What part of Azariah's journey hit you the hardest? Was it the moment she took back control of the cabin? or when the boardroom finally echoed her voice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, where are you watching from? Let us know your city or country. We love seeing how far these stories travel.